Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chapter
Adios, Mukunda,
16.
I'm sorry, Prabhu. I'm going to mute everybody, Prabhu, and you can unmute yourself. There's a lot of background noise. So
Okay.
I'm going to mute everybody once again. Yeah, please go ahead, unmute yourself, and you can start the recitation, Prabhu.
Chapter 16, text 1 to 3. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhi Gnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Danam Damascha Yagnascha Swadhyayastapa Ajavam Ahimsa Satyam Akrodhas Tyaga Shanti Apeshunam Daya Bhuteshwar Loluktvam Madhavam Harir Achapalam Tejakshama Driti Shaucham Adroho Nati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Devim Abhijatasya Bharata.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, freedom from envy and from the passion of honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature.
Text 4. Dambo Darpo Binash Bima Bim Bim Dambo Darpo Bhimanascha Krodha Parushyame Agnanam Chabijatasya Patha Sampadam Ashurim.
Pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance. These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, O son of Pritha.
Text 5. Devi Sampad Vimokshaya Nibandaya Surimata Mashucha Sampadam Devim Abhijatosi Pandava.
The transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, whereas the demoniac qualities make for bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with the divine qualities.
Text 6. Dvau Bhuta Sargau Lokesmin Deva Asura Evacha Devo Vistarasya Prokta Asuram Patha Me Shrinu.
O son of Pritha, in this world there are two kinds of created beings. One is called the divine, and the other demoniac. I have already explained to you at length the divine qualities. Now hear from me of the demoniac.
Text 7. Pravritim cha nivritim cha janana vidur asuraha na shaucham na pichacharo na satyam teshu vidyate.
Those who are demoniac do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them.
Text 8. Asatyam apratishtam te jagadahur anishwaram aparaspara sambhutam kimanyat kama haitukam.
They say that this world is unreal, with no foundation, no God in control. They say it is produced of sex desire and has no cause other than lust.
Text 9. Etam drishtim avashtabhya nashtatmano lapabuddhayaha prabhavantyugra karmanaha kshayaya jagato hitaha.
Following such conclusions, the demoniac who are lost to themselves and who have no intelligence engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world.
Text 10. Kamam ashritya dushpuram dambhamana madanvitaha mohat grihit vasad grahan pravatante shuchi vrataha.
Taking shelter of insatiable lust and absorbed in the conceit of pride and false prestige, the demoniac, thus illusioned, are always sworn to unclean work, attracted by the impermanent.
Text 11 to 12. Chintam aparimeyam cha pralayantam upashritaha kamapabhoga parama etavaditi nishchitaha आशापाशशतेर्बद्धाः कामक्रोधपरायणाः यन्ते कामभोगार्थम् अन्यायेनाथ सञ्चयान्.
Sorry, my screen's just really delayed. Okay. They believe that to gratify the senses is the prime necessity of human civilization. Thus, until the end of life, their anxiety is immeasurable. Bound by a network of hundreds of thousands of desires and absorbed in lust and anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification.
Text 13 to 15. Idam madhya maya labdham imam prapse manoratham idam asti idam api me bhavishyati punadhanam. असौ मया हतः शत्रुर्हनिष्ये चापरानपि ईश्वरोऽहम् अहं भोगी सिद्धोऽहं बलवान् सुखी आद्योऽभिजनवान् अस्मि कोऽन्योऽस्ति सदृशो मया यक्ष्ये दास्यामि मोदिष्य इत्यज्ञानविमोहिताः.
The demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future, more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I'm the Lord of everything. I'm the enjoyer, I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I'm the richest man surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices, I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance.
Text 16. अनेकचित्तविभ्रान्ता मोहजालसमावृताः प्रसक्ताः कामभोगेषु पतन्ति नरकेषु च.
Thus, perplexed by various anxieties and bound by a network of illusions, they become too strongly attached to sense enjoyment and fall down into hell.
Text 17. आत्मसम्भाविता स्तब्धा धनमानमदान्विताः यजन्ते नाम यज्ञैस्ते दम्भेनाविधिपूर्वकम्.
Self-complacent and always impudent, deluded by wealth and false prestige. They sometimes proudly perform sacrifices in name only, without following any rules or regulations.
Text 18. Ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham cha samshritaha mamatma paradeheshu pradvishanto bhyasuyakaha.
Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, the demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies and in the bodies of others, and blaspheme against the real religion.
Text 19. Tanaham dvisata kruran samsareshu naradaman Shipamya jasram ashubhan asurishveva yonishu.
Those who are envious and mischievous, who are lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life.
Text 20. Asurim yonim apanna muda janmani janmani mam aprapyeva kaunteya tato yantya tamam gatim.
Attaining repeated birth amongst the species of demoniac life, O son of Kunti, such persons can never approach me. Gradually, they sink down into the most abominable type of existence.
Text 21. Trividam narakshyedam द्वारं नाशनम् आत्मनः कामक्रोधस्तथा लोभस् तस्माद् एतत्त्रयं त्यजेत्.
Sorry. There are three gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul.
Text 22. Ete vimukta kaunteya tamodvare stribhi acharatyatmana shreyas tato yati param gatim.
The man who has escaped these three gates of hell, O son of Kunti, performs acts conducive to self realization and thus gradually attains a supreme destination.
Text 23. Ya shastra vidim utsrijya vartate kamakarataha na sa siddhim avapnoti na sukham na param gatim.
He who discards spiritual injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination.
Text 24. Tasmat shastram paramanam te karya karya vyavastito natva shastra vidanoktam karma kartumiharhasi.
One should therefore understand what is due to and what is not due to by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated.
Om Tat Sat iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjun Samvade Divya Sur Sampad Vibhag Yoganam Shodasho Adhyaya. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Jimukunda Prabhu and Yash. Yash, before you go away, so from Tuesday, we will be starting chapter 17. So you can start preparing because by the time we get to the Friday, it'll be chapter 17, Yash.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you so much for the
thank
recitation
you.
today. Thank you, Ajimukunda Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Yes, dear devotees, we will be starting on Tuesday in the association of Mukunda Hari Prabhu with chapter 17 on Tuesday. So I'm just going to share my screen now. This is the base. Bear with me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Okay, so today's text is 16.22. Etar vimukta kaunteya tamo dvaris nara acharati atmana shreyas tato yati param gatim. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The man who has escaped three gates of hell, O son of Kunti, performs acts conducive to self-realization and thus gradually attains the supreme destination. Purport. One should be very careful of these three enemies to human life: lust, anger, and greed. The more a person is freed from lust, anger, and greed, the more his existence becomes pure. Then he can follow the rules and regulations enjoined in the Vedic literature. By following the regulative principles of human life, one gradually raises himself to the platform of spiritual realization. If one is so fortunate by such practice to rise to the platform of Krishna consciousness, then success is guaranteed for him. In the Vedic literature, the ways of action and reaction are prescribed to enable one to come to the stage of purification. The whole method is based on giving up lust, greed, and anger. By cultivating knowledge of this process, one can be elevated to the highest position of self realization. This self realization is perfected in devotional service. In that devotional service, the liberation of the conditioned soul is guaranteed. Therefore, according to the Vedic system, there are there are instituted the four orders of life and the four statuses of life, called the caste system and the spiritual order system. There are different rules and regulations for different castes or divisions of society, and if a person is able to follow them, he will automatically he will be automatically raised to the highest platform of spiritual realization. Then he can have liberation without a doubt. Translation once again. The man who has escaped these three gates of hell, O son of Kunti, performs acts conducive to self realization and thus gradually attains the supreme destination. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurapani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyati Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuve Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. So, thank you for joining us this evening in this session of towards the last section of Bhagavad Gita. We are in section 3, which is covered over these three verses. And the theme of these three verses of the section is the choice of escaping to the supreme destination. So, that's a deliberate choice we as living entity can make by escaping ourselves to the supreme destination, and thereby while we are trying to achieve the supreme destination, we automatically getting free from the demoniac qualities. So and what is the practical application of this section, because it's quite nice to reflect on how we can apply these teachings of Bhagavad Gita or this particular section in our life. And the practical application is to achieve release from the state of conditioned life. One must follow the dictation of scriptures and not the dictation of lower material mode. So that's what these verses are trying to tell us, that let's govern our life not by our own whims, but through the directions or the instructions given to us through the scriptures, spiritual masters, and sadhus. If we do that, then not only we get rid of the demoniac tendency in us, but we also are then treading the right path to achieve the supreme destination or the spiritual world. Having gone there, we don't have to return. Once we reach the supreme abode of the Lord, because it is Chintamani, it's full of bliss and full of eternity, there is no question of us actually gliding down back into the earthly planet or any other planet for that matter. So, what is the link between the section 2 and the section 3? So, here I wanted to share with you Baladev Vidya Bhushan's comment from his commentary, where Arjuna now is asked Krishna, people hearing this are going to want to give up these qualities, right? What a question, obviously, Arjuna must have in his mind. And then, if they want to give up what they can do to accomplish this, like in order to give the demoniac tendency, what is it that they can do? He's asking a very practical question. Krishna answers this question and in this way presents us with our own choice, either to adopt demoniac life and become degraded, or reject it and obtain the supreme destination. So you see, in life, we are always faced with this kind of situation. Sometimes our mind, a lot of times at least, my mind is running towards demoniac tendency of enjoyment, that I wish I could have this, I wish I could be there, I wish I could achieve this. And sometimes, by Krishna's grace or the mercy of spiritual master, our mind can also tell us, let me read a chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Let me sit in one place and chant my rounds on my japa mala. Or let me hear some nice lecture of Srila Prabhupada or my spiritual master or any other Vaishnava for that matter. So we are constantly having to play that battle with our mind and try to do what is good. But you see, what happens is when we take the shelter of the scriptures, then our intelligence is sharpened, not based on our own conditioning, but based on the Shastra, which is completely perfect. Although it is explained in Bhagavatam that, like, that there is a verse called Tadvak Visargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Prati Shlokam Avadhavati Api. So in that it is explained that these scriptures are, they are infallible. And at the end, the shloka ends like, although it is composed, and there may have been some errors in it, but yet because it is done under the direction of the Lord of the previous parampara, yet the scripture is meant to bring about revolution in the world's misdirected civilization. It's a very strong statement Srila Prabhupada uses, to bring about revolution in the world's misdirected civilization. So one thing is to look at the world, but even our mind is misdirected right now. So when we take the shelter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, then we are completely sheltered, protected, and guided through the intelligence of the Shastra, which is going to save us from the biggest danger of life when we are following the scriptures. And what is the biggest danger of life? Can somebody tell me? Unmute yourself and tell me, what is the biggest danger of life?
Greed, death.
To
Death.
forget Krishna.
Death. Yes, Bhagavati Mataji. Death. Yes. Of course, to forget Krishna, definitely greed, all these things are, but the biggest danger of life is explained by Shastras, or is to be death. And Krishna is saying that even if somebody makes a slightest progress in this path, he's saved from that biggest danger of death at the time of death. By remembering me, he's able to come to me. So that's the link between these two sections. And yesterday, Divya Gaurangi Mataji covered the first part, which I've just mentioned here, that how these verses describe the beginning of the demoniac life and how all these demoniac qualities begin with these three important, well, important, but yeah, important elements or qualities like lust, anger, and greed. These are the three gates to hell. So that was in the text 21, already highlighted and covered by Divya Gaurangi Mataji yesterday. And the extreme danger from these gates, which is explained here by Prabhupada in the purport, is that they can kill the self to such an extent that there will be no possibility from this material entanglement. Thus, they lead to the degradation of the soul. You see, that is what happens if we take shelter of these three things. Not only we are degrading or getting entangled in the material world, but we are leading our life not considering what is in our hit, like what is in our favor and what is best for our soul and what is the food for our soul. We are trying to nourish our body, but forgetting to nourish the soul. Like there is this famous story how this one lady bought a beautiful cage and a parrot, and the cage was made up of gold, so she was very attached because it was very expensive. And it was explained in the story that how she carried on looking after the cage by every day polishing it or cleaning it. But in the process of doing so, she forgot to feed the bird inside. And of course, what happened after a while, the bird died. And so it is the same point which is being referred here, that if we keep feeding our material body and forget about our soul, then one day we will be in a similar situation. We're going to starve our soul for the want of Krishna consciousness, as Srila Prabhupada says. And because we are feeding our body, because of that nice feeding we are given, we will be then given an appropriate body under the guidance of the material nature, empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we need to make that deliberate choice, that do I want to feed the soul, or do I want to feed the body enough to keep my body and soul together, as Prabhupada says. You see, uh, when there is a difference in trying to keep our body and soul together, and our Goswamis were the most topmost uh, example of keeping the body and soul together, that how they were sustaining themselves on just at times some buttermilk or whatever would come on its own accord. They would just have that, and sometimes they may not even get that. Of course, that is not, we are not at that platform, but equally, if we can try to control our tongue as much as possible by eating Krishna Prasadam, and trying to live simply so that we can progress in Krishna consciousness. Like our level is not of the level of Jiva Goswami. One story is coming to my mind. One time, Rupa Goswami was writing Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, and a very prominent acharya, who was it at that time who visited Rupa Goswami? Somebody can help me if they know this personality. I'm forgetting the name of the person. He visited Rupa Goswami and he was just writing, and he asked, "What are you doing, Rupa?" And Rupa Goswami said, "My dear sir, I'm writing Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion, and these are my writings." So he looked at and he turned one or two pages, really appreciated. And when he came to the word mukti, he tried, and there Rupa Goswami had called it tucha, like, not at all to be aspired, really like very low. So that person or the personality said that we should not treat mukti is a very high level. We can't say like that. Jiva Goswami was just doing some like cleaning at the background there while listening to all this which was going on. And Rupa Goswami, being very humble, accepted that and he said, "I will correct it as you say," and did not protest or didn't say anything.
It was
And
Vallabhacharya.
Vallabhacharya, thank you, Vishalini Mataji. That was very appropriate. So Vallabhacharya then said, "Thank you, Rupa Goswami. It was really nice to meet you. I'm now going to take bath in Yamuna. I'll see you later." He then took bid farewell, went to Yamuna, and Jiva Goswami couldn't tolerate this point because he knew in what sense Rupa Goswami had written about mukti. So he went running down to Yamuna and met with sorry, Mataji, I forgot the name of the personality.
Vallabhacharya.
Vallabhacharya. He met with Vallabhacharya at the Yamuna Ghat and said, "My dear sir, please forgive me for this impudence. I want to say that the word mukti used by my spiritual master, Srila Rupa Goswami Pad, is to say that to try and make the devotees believe that how superior and wonderful is the personal form or serving the devotee in the personal form, that for that aspiration, that a devotee doesn't even care a fig about mukti." And then he explained quite a lot from Shastras and from all the points. And Vallabhacharya was completely happy with the evidence and with the reasoning given by Jiva Goswami. And he said, "Right now I'm going to go to Rupa Goswami and tell him to keep it as it is and not change it." He went back. I'm keeping it short. He told Rupa Goswami that I will be Rupa Goswami. He said to Rupa Goswami, "I thought about it. And who's this Jiva? He came and he explained so wonderfully. And I would like you to keep that same word as it is." And he decided to keep it exactly. And Rupa Goswami said, "I will do whatever you want, sir. If you like it to be kept it like this, I will leave it." And Vallabhacharya left. And then Rupa Goswami got up and said, "Where is Jiva Goswami?" And Jiva Goswami came in and said, "You've done an aprad. You have, gone against, you have not respected such a senior acharya like Vallabhacharya, and you made an offense. You have no right to live in Vrindavan." And he was asked to go, and you said, "You go and leave Vrindavan right now. I don't want to see your face." And Jiva Goswami started crying, paying obeisances, begging forgiveness. But Rupa Goswami decided not to forgive him. And Jiva Goswami left at the outskirts of Vrindavan in a cave of crocodiles. Just there he was living and not eating anything, just chanting the holy name, crying day in, day out in the love of his spiritual master and thinking how fallen he is. So the point is, our level is not at that level. But let me just finish the story since we are on that point. You must be, although the connection is not so much. The point was they could do this. So Jiva Goswami did it for many days. He did not eat anything, and there was one lady, Brajwasi, who was there. She noticed, and while she was doing some work, Sanatan Goswami was there, and he heard that this sadhu is there who's lost his body and hardly alive. He's about to die any moment. And Sanatan Goswami immediately thought nobody can do this austerity apart from Jiva Goswami. And he ran to that place and looking at Jiva Goswami, he embraced him and said, "What are you doing?" And then he explained what happened. And Sanatan Goswami went running to Vrindavan and he told Rupa Goswami, and Rupa Goswami at that moment speaking to some devotees talking about Jiva Daya, Krishna Nam, Sarva Dharma Sar. He was talking about Bhakti Vinod Thakur's this verse, this stanza from the bhajan. And Sanatan Goswami waited for it to finish. And when Rupa Goswami was alone, he's saying, "You're talking about Jiva Daya, but you're not even giving Daya to your own Jeev Goswami. He's crying day in, day out. He's lost all his bodily luster. He's not eating anything." And hearing this, Rupa Goswami felt so bad. He said, "Look, my heart has become like a stone." And in that moment, he called Krishna Das, his another servant, wrote a beautiful letter for Jiva Goswami. And he said, said, write this, please tell him, and it's my instruction, tell him to come back. And right then and there, Krishna Das went, Jiva Goswami came back. And just at that meeting, Rupa Goswami handed over him the beautiful small deities of Radha Damodar to be worshipped by Jiva Goswami out of love and reciprocation. And he said, now we need to do so much of writing. These scriptures have to reach the world and we have to preach. So please look after your health and help me. So the point here is the devotees, in order to engage in the activities of Krishna consciousness, have to keep the body and soul together. And this is the desire of our Goswamis and of our Acharyas to take these scriptures as wide and as far as possible and to benefit the world. So moving on from this verse, there are 3 points. The first is basis of the whole method and prescription of the Vedic literature is the entire method is based on giving up lust and anger. The more one gives up, the more his existence becomes pure. Then he can follow all the rules and regulations and gradually rise to spiritual realization. Thus, one can rise to the platform of Krishna consciousness. You see, now you must be thinking, how do I give up? The whole idea is by engaging in Krishna consciousness moment by moment, making by degrees, making some progress in our spiritual life, we are getting closer to overcoming these tendencies to some degree or other. And one day will come by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada that we will be able to completely overcome these tendencies and hopefully chant purely the holy name and attain to the pure devotional service platform. And how this Vedic system is practically instituted is in the form of Varnashram duties. Prabhupada speaks about it in the purport, which help in gradual elevation to the highest platform of spiritual realization and liberation. One more point, actually, I think I wasn't in my mind to share that story of Jiva Goswami and Vallabha Acharya and the beautiful story of Rupa Goswami. It just came to me, and I think it's so appropriate because you see, when Rupa Goswami reminded Jiva Goswami that the purpose of our life, our dear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told us to come here, excavate the spiritual places and write scriptures so that we can benefit the world. Just as he reminded, after that, Jiva Goswami never stopped in his life to write scriptures. And he kept on writing Sandarbhas and so many other wonderful literatures until Narottam Das Thakur came. Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivas Acharya, and Shamananda Pandit, these three glorious devotees, they were then entrusted the task to take this literature to Bengal and to other parts of South India and distribute them. And to expand the Krishna consciousness movement, which had then begun because of the Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami and Jiva Goswami and all the other Goswamis. So we are really very, that is why Krishna is telling that we have to work according to the scriptures. And imagine if Rupa and Srila Sanatan and Srila Rupa and Srila Jiva Goswami had not written these books, where will we be today? And if Srila Prabhupada had not taken the pain to sit down in Radha Damodar temple, he could have been just chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, and just perfected his life being in Vrindavan. But no, he took the pain to take those different commentaries of various Goswamis and various Acharyas and then transcribe them in a very relative manner so that we can understand these books. And sometimes we miss these basic things in our life. It happens. We think, oh, Prabhupada has given me some nice books like Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, but they don't talk about higher tattva. Let me walk down to the Lohi Bazaar after buying dhoti kurta. Oh, there is Ras Bihari Sons here. Let me go and see what's in there. And then we walk into Ras Bihari Sun and we see, oh, wow, Sandarbha is there. These books are there. Oh, let me collect all of this. And either we collect it and then when we put them on the shelf, or we try to read them and we find it difficult to understand them. But my point is, let's not miss the basic formula, which in itself is potent enough to take us back to the spiritual world. Let's put our faith and energy in reading, in studying, in living, in distributing these books of Srila Prabhupada, which are non-different to the books of Srila Rupa Goswami, which are then non-different to the books of emanating from the lotus mouth of Lord Krishna directly. So now coming down to the last point about the Varnashram Dharma. So there is a social order and then there is a spiritual order. So the social order is this order where you have Brahmin, Kshatriyas, who are warriors, you have Vaishyas, and you have Sudras. You see, for where we live in the world today, we cannot look at the conversation which took place between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Rai, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu even rejected when he asked, what is the best way to attain love of Godhead? Later on, after many answers, after Mahaprabhu saying, no, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right, Ramananda Rai said that following the Varna ashram will lead us there. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu even said no to that. Of course, that's our ultimate, following the path of the gopis. When Ramananda Rai said, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was completely satisfied. But our level is not there yet. That's why we have wonderful personalities in ISKCON who have taken these words of Srila Prabhupada so true to our hearts, their hearts, like His Holiness Shivaram Maharaj, really trying to take to the world and explain how important Varnashram Dharma is. His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj encouraging devotees to open the farm community. His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, Govardhan Eco Village. Many other villages, are coming up trying to emphasize on the importance of these different farm communities so that people can be engaged, devotees can also be engaged. So here we see the Brahmana class is a very important class because it engages in enlightening the Kshatriyas and everybody else in our society. That's why they're called Aryans. And even Kshatriyas are regarded Aryans because they are acting or fighting on the basis of religious principles or on the basis of scriptures. And similarly, Vaishyas are guiding themselves to engage their psychophysical nature in a certain way of like being farming, merchants, craftspeople, and doing other activities which are again prescribed in the Shastras. Of course, the Sudras then engaged in as farm workers, servant, and laborers and can be classed as non-Aryans, but in the Krishna consciousness society, even those who engage at that level can be at the top level of being a Brahmana because a Vaishnava is the topmost Brahmana, as Srila Prabhupada calls it. So it's very, at least we should aspire to be able to understand what our psychophysical nature is and try to engage our life energy in a similar way. And these are the spiritual ashrams or the Vedic ashrams, which are again meant to gradually elevate our consciousness, our detachment, and our bhakti, starting from the student life of brahmacharya, which Prabhupada recommends from the age of 5, 7, different years is given all the way to 25. After that, one has the license or permission if they wish to engage in the family or grahastha life, which should also be a regulated life. And there you have a license of having regulated sense gratification with an idea to procreate Krishna conscious children to help the society flood, bring more devotees so more devotees can make more devotees. Finally, retired life, which is vanaprastha life, and then taking up to the sannyas life towards the end of our life. So this is the Vedic way of taking gradual steps and making progress in our spiritual life. And the whole idea, one must think, one should never try to look at another ashram like, we have this mentality, oh, this Prabhu is changed into white, there's hardly any brahmacharis. So we are grahasthas and we think like that. Imagine what kind of mentality we carry sometimes. So the point is, every ashram, the word ashram also signifies sacredness of that place. So whether somebody is a brahmacharya, grahastha, or vanapasta, or a sannyas, the idea is we are all situated in an ashram. And ashram is a place where we are taking the ashraya of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, and serving him according to where our ashram is. So whether we are a brahmacharya, we should try to engage in study, in cultivation, serving the spiritual master more rigorously. As a grahastha, our prime duty is to invite people to our home, feed them prasadam, give charity to so that all the other three ashrams can then be maintained very nicely. Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami demonstrated the ideal way by just keeping 25% for themselves and then dividing the rest 75 accordingly. But where we live today and our expenses, one should do whatever they can to their best of the capacity to try to give according to one's capacity, so that way we will soon get purification and blessings, because if we use our Lakshmi for furthering Krishna consciousness as much as possible, that will bring about a lot of purification in our life. Even though we are trying to practice bhakti and doing other limbs, but giving in charity is a very important principle for Grahastha life. And finally, it is very important that we take to Vanaprastha. And Prabhupada explains in many places, Vanaprastha doesn't necessarily mean leaving the wife. You can live with your wife, but with no attachment for sense gratification, but both are working with the spirit of trying to help each other, furthering in Krishna consciousness. I'm very fortunate. My parents have entered that ashram and they have entered Vrindavan for many years. They are practicing their Krishna consciousness there now. And so, like this, as much as possible, we should work on a plan. We should have a plan in our life to make retirement. Like we have some wonderful devotees like Mukunda Hari Prabhu in our community who voluntarily decided to give up his business and now dedicating his life as much as possible to Krishna consciousness. Like this, there are many devotees in our community. So if you have the means, try to dedicate more time, more wealth, and more energy for Krishna consciousness. And finally, once you reach such certain stage, and by the mercy of Vaishnavas and your spiritual master, perhaps one can consider taking sannyas. Um, yeah, so that brings me to the conclusion of today's session. I hope I'm on time and not gone over. Oh, it's 8:30. Okay, so that's good. So please let me know if you have any comments, any questions, or any reflections you may wish to share from today's session. Rasalila Mataji is saying thank you for the wonderful session and explanations. Thank you, Mataji, for the encouragement. Thank you, Divya Gaurangi Mataji, for your encouragement and for your service. Thank you, Bhagwati Mataji, for the encouragement. Very thought-provoking. Thank you. What is life renunciation? Okay, Dev Kishan Prabhu, would you like to maybe unmute and just give us a bit more on that as to what is it that you like to inquire when you say life renunciation?
Basically, sorry, Hare Krishna Prabhu, you know the last bullet point, like I understood the other three, but I just wasn't sure what life renunciation meant really. Like I couldn't understand it.
Okay, sure, Prabhu. Thank you for asking that question, Prabhu. So, Prabhu, the last element is the renounced order or the life of renunciation, where one has no attachment of living at home. Even in Vanaprastha, one can make a home or a kutir and carry on doing, well, you can have a kutir even as a sannyas, but the idea is you're no longer living with any family connections. You have no wife, you have no children. You may have had them, but you have renounced them completely. And now you are in, as per Prabhupada's standards, the idea of sannyas is to travel and preach. That's the that's the memorandum Prabhupada gave to all the sannyasis. And in that spirit, you will always be saved, because when you're traveling, you're taking association of other god brothers, god sisters, and not retire and live in Radhakund to just do our bhajan. Even if you're doing that, be in the association of devotees, because it is a very dangerous situation. And there are times in our movement, Prabhu, in the early stages when people were young, they took sannyas, and because after Prabhupada left, because they were not in association, and those who took association of their god brothers, they were fine. But those who decided to carry on their own way, or even decided to take a spirit that now I'm the next Prabhupada, or I can be the guru, or that perspective, unfortunately, it didn't last very long for them to maintain that ashram, or that kind of purity, or that kind of steadiness of the mind, Prabhu. So the idea is you have no longer material attachments. You're completely depending on the mercy of Krishna, and you're meant to dedicate your life in completely preaching Krishna consciousness, Prabhu. I hope that answers
That's
your
perfect.
question.
Thank you so much, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, so isn't it more about consciousness? I know Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj always used to say that it's about consciousness rather than physically being where you are. So you could be in Vrindavan, but your brain and your mind could be in London all the time. And you could be in London, but you could be living a Vrindavan consciousness. So how does
Yes,
that work?
yes, Mataji. So, Mataji, in the higher consciousness is the consciousness as recommended by His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj. is to always try to keep our mind in spiritual activities. And if we are, then we are naturally living in Vrindavan. However, as an aspiring devotee and as an keeping the ultimate goal of attaining the pure love of Godhead, we should definitely harbor a desire in our heart, Hema Mataji, that when can I be mentally ready so I can physically reside also in Dham and see the Dham in that light. Because throughout his life, every time Prabhupada was not feeling slightest unwell or he had a bit of a heart attack or stroke, he immediately wanted to reach Vrindavan. Many times it happened while he was in West. He said, "Take me to Vrindavan." Because he wanted to somehow or other, it was his idea to be there and leave his body in Vrindavan because his heart was in Vrindavan. So because Prabhupada cultivated and harbored that desire throughout his life, Krishna arranged his glorious departure, being a pure devotee, within the devotees, God brothers, God sisters, disciples all chanting the kirtan. That's a glorious departure. On the other hand, we have another glorious departure of many devotees like Mother Kalangana, His Grace Shruti Dhamma Prabhu, who are equally were in Vrindavan consciousness and they were still able to have a glorious departure. Main thing is to be in the association. We should pray that, my Lord, whenever my turn comes, please let me hear your holy name or let me say your holy name. That should be our prayer. Because what we have done is up to Krishna then. But if we can pray to be in the association of the devotees, that's the best thing. But ultimately, Mataji, Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur, one of our acharyas in the Vrindavan Mahima Amrita, very clearly states that one should definitely aspire in this human form of life to come and physically reside in Vrindavan one day, or Mayapur, or any other dham for that matter, because they are non-different. So Mataji, both are true. I would put Maharaj's point right on the top. The cultivation of the consciousness is the most important aspect, but one should also harbor the desire to somehow attain the lotus feet of Vrindavan as much as possible in this life, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Seema Mataji is asking a question. Prabhu, please explain about the life and duties in Vanaprastha ashram. So my understanding, Seema Mataji, is that in Vanaprastha ashram, uh, your children are now grown up. If you have some, they have retired. Sorry, children have taken to their duties, either gotten married or doing their thing. And you as a husband or a wife, or even a husband who has not yet taken a sannyas, or a wife can lead a vanaprastha life. There's, if one or other is not there, but ideally you both go and live wherever you are, engage your service in the temple, to Hema Mataji's point, and cultivate that consciousness. But if Krishna arranges and you have the blessings of the Vaishnava, actually one important point in the previous question, main thing depends on the blessings of the spiritual master and the Vaishnava. If your spiritual master blesses you that yes, you go live in Braj and do your seva and sadhana there, then your life is wonderful. But if your spiritual master says, please serve here, do this, your life is wonderful. It's like that. So coming back to your point, Seema Mataji, main thing is husband is really trying to get as strong as possible now to prepare for sannyas if possible. If not, trying to practice Krishna consciousness with a lot of sincerity, vigor, and strictness. And wife is supposed to be doing the same and supporting the husband. Because we know from scriptures, when wife is supporting the husband at that level, then she's automatically getting the 50% benefit, and the rest 50% she will get because of her own sadhana as well. So the idea is to really, there is not a huge amount of difference, Mataji, for a practicing devotee from a Grahastha ashram to Vanaprastha. But I would say you become a little bit lighter in your on your weight on the shoulders, because the children do take a lot of time and energy. But when they are devotee, then it is also done very harmoniously, you see. So main thing is more dedication and more time for Krishna consciousness, which naturally brings detachment, Seema Mataji. I hope that helps answer your question.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you for your wonderful class. Dandavat pranams to you. My question is, I think I shouldn't be asking this question, but I just thought in my mind it came, so I'm asking. The Varnashrama system, in the Varnashrama system, the Grihastha ashram has to maintain the Brahmachari ashram and the Vanaprastha and the Sannyas. Isn't it a tall order, because Grihastha ashram also has to maintain his or her family, and then and to maintain all the other ashram is, so that's my question, kind of. It's like
Very
lot of
nice question.
responsibility.
Yes, Mataji. So I'll share a little small story about it, Mataji. So what it is we have to do, we need to understand this, the scripture order, which is this, which I shared with you. But we also have to see what is our capacity, and whatever we, according to our capacity, we should do. So let's say, if even if you're contributing to the temple in some regular way, or sponsoring the books of Srila Prabhupada, or doing some, something where, if you have the financial means. If you don't, then you dedicate your energy and time as much as possible. That way also you're contributing to all the three societies. But the main thing is, to your, lot of times what happens is, Rupa Mataji, this instruction is there, but we as a grahastha become complacent. When the more Lakshmi comes, we think, let me make this, let me do this, let me do that. That's our natural tendency. But we don't come to the point of, how can I help these three ashrams or my temple, or what can I contribute? So I just want to share this, something which really struck with me, and I think I mentioned it before, I can't remember. My spiritual master shared this with us once. Once he was in Radhakund taking bath, and he had just he had entered Govardhan. Like every year they go for 19 years, they recite Bhagavatam in Kartik 5 hours every day with Keshav Bharati Maharaj, few devotees. And Maharaj, at the end of his stay, he offers donation. Even sannyasis who come, if they have means, they offer. But Maharaj, obviously being a grahastha spiritual master, he offers donation to the ashram where he lives, and reciprocation. So this time what happened, Maharaj had gone to Radhakund, taken bath, he had some Lakshmi, he took out his clothes, he prayed to Radharani, Srimati Radharani, took bath, came out, the monkeys had taken his clothes. So he's a 6.3 foot tall gentleman, and only gamcha, and obviously wet. He had to walk in that gamcha from Radhakund to Govardhan in his ashram, to his ashram. And he bought another, like he took, I think, another gamcha from somebody to, and somehow he made it. And he had that realization that whatever I have, if I don't give it in the right place in the first instance, by nature, it will be taken away from me. So that is a very high level of realization which Maharaj practices. But the learning is, when we get the Lakshmi, and every month, if we can decide, I'm going to spend £100 a month of my salary in dedicating to Prabhupada books, or giving to the temple in Haveli, whatever means I can, or cows, or whatever way, then what you're doing is, you're trying to develop the same mentality in trying to do your bit in whatever capacity you can. So the idea is, sthane sthita, wherever we are, Mataji, doesn't matter. We carry on our Krishna consciousness and we give according to our capacity. And if our capacity increases, we give more. That should be the main principle, Rupa Mataji.
Okay, thank you very much, Prabhuji. Excellent, excellent answer. I always tell my sons that Lakshmi, goddess of wealth, is Vishnu's wife. So we always give our Lakshmi to Vishnu,
Yeah.
to the proprietor. So I always tell them that you should not be using your Lakshmi in so many other various things in the world that can distract you. So it's a very, like in all Hinduism, not only Vaishnavism, in Hinduism it is always we worship goddess Lakshmi as Vishnu's wife, and where our Lakshmi should go, we should know where it should go actually.
Yes,
So
Mataji.
yeah, thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you, Rupa Mataji. Hema Mataji had another counter question in relation to the previous point. I have heard, I have read that once one must not reside in Dham for more than few days in case of Dham Aparad. How does this one balances? So Mataji, the point is, yes, Prabhupada has warned us to not recite us, but he has, if you more and more read Prabhupada books, you will also come to an understanding that what Prabhupada was always worried is our early stages of Krishna consciousness and us not mentally living in Vrindavan, or even having some appreciation for Vrindavan. Appreciation for Dham is extremely important. So if we go to Dham in the idea of, like, say, having burger in Govindas, and wonderful prasadam when it is served, or like, like different ideas we may have. Obviously that's, I mean, it's still prasadam, but gradually we'll purify ourselves. But the biggest aspiration we can uphold in our heart is Dham Seva. I'll give you an example, Hema Mataji. So when you have that kind of spirit, whenever you go to Vrindavan in Kartik and go, can I get some service, some Vaishnava, somewhere, can I give something, can I do something, can I broom this place, what can I do? And when you go in that consciousness, you will be surprised, Hema Mataji, that you will be given so many opportunities to service, even though you do not know many people there. This is my small experience, not realization. Second thing is that you can even serve the dham and the services can be same. So when I met my spiritual master, I used to think, what a wonderful service this book distribution is. It's really helping my Krishna consciousness, and I'm loving it. But first email came about the yatra, and I said, oh, yatra, we'll go here, see the places, beautiful here, that will be a nice experience, so many devotees, my god brothers. But there's no question of book distribution. What can we do? How can we serve in that way? I went there to my surprise, in the first yatra only. I went there, although I had said they won't be there, but I was the first one to get the service. For some reason or other, one devotee engaged me. Divya, I wasn't even engaged. He said, Bhakta Devesh, please take these bags, put the books together, hand out these bags to everybody in the morning. These are the language cards, and these are books in Odia, Bengali, and Hindi language. And I stood by the gate and I did that service. Then later on, I was promoted for another service in Jagannath Puri. I was made Khaja King. That was my name. So, you get Khaja Prasadam. So my service was to collect all the orders from all the Vaishnavas and put an order to the organizer who was doing our Prasadam, and organize the Khaja boxes and give it to everybody after the class in the evening. So in many years of me going to the Dham with this idea that superb, we will get to distribute Uriya books to the Dhamvasi and have that beautiful exchange. And that really opened up my eyes, Hema Mataji. So the point is, if our intention and our desire is there somehow, even theoretically, I want to serve, I want to serve, I want to serve, then Srimati Radharani will invite us to live in Dham and we won't make aparadh. And even if we do by chance, she will be merciful and we will still be allowed to live in Vrindavan, Mataji. It is a very high consciousness, but we should aspire, because our acharyas, why did they live in Dham? Why did Prabhupada was always thinking of Vrindavan? So sometimes the physical environment can also make a difference, but there is a time for everything. So my idea, I'm not saying that we should all go and live in Braj. Who will do the service? How will the movement expand? But the idea is we should somehow cultivate that desire. Even the cultivation of desire, if we can't go, then Krishna will take us to Golok Vrindavan one day, Mataji. And that will be the perfection as well. So let's keep harboring this desire of also physically being in Vrindavan. I hope that helps your...
That's really useful, Prabhuji. The service idea is just amazing. Yeah, I think that's a consciousness we need to go with. Thank you very much.
Thank
Wonderful.
You,
thank you.
Okay, devotees, it's 8. Actually, I'll end on a very nice pastime in the Dham, which I learned from my Guru Maharaj. This was in the first yatra of Jagannath Puri, where we were going, distributing the books. As the Harinam was going, we were doing Harinam book distribution. While we are going to a spot, there will be Katha by Madhavanand Prabhu, Gaur Govind Maharaj, amazing disciple. And then we will hear from Guru Maharaj, and some other devotees will say Prabhupada, other disciples are there. And on the way back will be Harinam and book distribution. And the yatra had Japanese, Chinese, people all over the world. And seeing the Japanese people not speaking anything but to sometimes even English, they had the language cards and they were the one distributing the most amount of books, because they had utsahan, they had such enthusiasm to give out Prabhupada books. And they were interacting in such an amazing ways. So this, and you learn when you have that mood, like we all learn from our spiritual master. So when I saw my Guru Maharaj, I was just behind him. That's one habit I have. Whenever I'm there, if my Guru Maharaj is there, I somehow or other literally hold on to his kurta, and I don't leave him. So I was there, and then Maharaj was interacting with the Brajvasi in Jagannath Puri, and he was giving the book. I think I don't know if I've shared this. The Brajvasi holded on to the book, and before he was about to hold the book, the Brajvasi took his shoes off, and he came like barefoot, and then he had his hand like that, and he took Maharaj, and Maharaj saw him what he's doing. Maharaj, took out his shoes, and then he gave him the books. And then later on, they went, another Brajvasi they met, he took out the shoes, he called his wife, get me some water, he washed his hand, and then he did this. So after this news got out, we went to our train station to reach to Jagannath Puri to travel to Mayapur. And you should have seen 90 devotees on one platform, which was fully crowded, no COVID. I think we missed out. Probably there were some pictures. all 70, 80 devotees were throwing their shoes, and it was like a moment to watch and behold what was going on there. You know, so devotees started to take out their shoes first, and people became so, because they're already Brajvasis, and they were like, wow, this is spiritual, this is amazing, I better take my shoes out. So it was such an amazing experience, and that really left such an impression on my mind and heart that that's the way to understand Dham, that's the way to love the Brajvasis, and that's the way to attain Dham one day. It's a very small thing, but it just makes the point so important, that when we are in Dham, like, I could see my spiritual master, he took that Brajvasi, of course, as his guru in that moment, and took what the shiksha he had to give. And after that, Maharaj didn't stop in Mayapur, Jagannath Puri, every single book he gave, the shoes were out. And that's a special prerogative to do that in Dham, because Dham is so worshipable actually. So I want to end on that point. I hope everybody found it inspiring. And please, next time you go to Vrindavan, try to do this experience. It's an amazing experience, by the way. In Braj, anyway, most of us walk barefoot when we are doing parikrama, etc. But something to really try it out, and let me know how you got on actually. So on
Can I
that
say
note,
something on the dam?
sorry,
Can I
Mataji.
say reside? Can I say
Yes,
something
please,
on
please,
residing
please
on
go
the
ahead.
dam?
Yes,
To
Mataji.
reside in the dam is very auspicious and it purifies us. And there is a way to a path leading to Golok Vrindavan. And because you purify yourself in such a way, because you come from the Western world, and you have to adopt the Eastern side of the world, right? And it's very difficult. Even milk won't agree with us for a few days. But if we carry on, and that is purification, literally. And when we see dirt, we don't see dirt. We see a Chintamani Dham, then we can progress. So that is the aparat we don't have to do. So many little bits we don't have to do, which we carry on doing. Even like people coming asking for alms or something, and you just ignore them, or that because they're Brajvasis, we can't ignore them. So
Yes.
many little things that we have to do to purify ourselves. So staying in them is quite difficult, but it is a greatest purification and path to Golok Vrindavan.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
Mataji. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that wonderful icing at the end. So that was very helpful. So let's pray to Srila Prabhupada, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Shri Radha Gokulananda, Sitaram Lakshan Hanuman, and Gaurnitai, that if you so desire, our lordships, please keep our mind as much as possible absorbed in Vrindavan through our services, through our dedication to this International Society of Krishna Consciousness, in whatever shape and form, if we can use our body, mind, and words in the service of the Vaishnavas and the service of Srila Prabhupada in expanding this Sankirtan movement, to that extent we can live in Vrindavan. And if you also so desire, then please also allow us to live in Braj as much as possible, mentally, physically, spiritually, and dedicate our life to this wonderful Krishna consciousness movement. Thank you for considering our request. If you all agree with this prayer in part or whole, please unmute yourself and say Hare Krishna as loudly as you can.
Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna, Hari
Hare Krishna,
Bol, Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you so much for
Hare
coming.
Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for a wonderful class.
Hare
Thank you so
Krishna.
much, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Krishna Prabhuji.
Wonderful session, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Bhagavati Mata.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Very, very nice explanations. Thank you so much.
Wonderful class.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
the wonderful
Yes,
class.
wonderful class. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, wonderful
Thank you.
class. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.